Hello and welcome to New York Yankees History and Heroes. I'm Lynn and I'm here with Spencer and Ciarra. And the year is 1985. We're going way back to 1985. And along the way, we're going to talk about a hero that we're going to be highlighting. And hey, good evening to Numbers Guy and Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. And so 1985, Spencer, why don't you set the stage for us and why we're going there?
Well, we're talking about 1985 because this weekend is the first installment of the Subway Series. And the Yankees are having a great season. They're in first place. The New York Mets are having a great season, and they are in first place. This is also the 40th anniversary of the 1985 season, in which both the Yankees and the Mets, both played competitive baseball. Not just competitive baseball, but both teams were in the playoff race going into the very last series of the year. So going into game 159, they were both within two or three games of the division and getting into the American League Championship Series at that time. Also, both teams in their final series were chasing the very teams that they were trying to usurp. The Mets were chasing the Cardinals, and the Yankees were chasing after the Toronto Blue Jays. So, in lieu of the Subway Series happening now, it just seemed to scream that we had to dedicate some type of episode that could relate to the Subway Series. We didn't want to do something, banal or try it like, the 25th anniversary of the Subway Series, the World Series, which maybe we'll do later on. We thought we'd shed light on something that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is the 1985 season. And as Lynn said, our feature player today, we're going to discuss Dave Winfield. We got to give Dave Winfield, Winnie, we're going to give him some love.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really remarkable, you drew some really good comparisons, Spencer. What's remarkable about 1985 in terms of how things laid out. So yes, they both ended up in second place, but their records were astonishingly identical,
Yeah.
practically identical. So that season, the Mets went 98 and 64 and they finished 3 games behind the Cards. The Yankees finished 2 games behind the
Yeah.
Jays, and they were, I believe, 97 and 64. So similar in that way.
Yeah.
And so it's striking to me that there's similarities that we're starting to see with the 2025 squad.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about the 1980s, Spencer. Um, and
Well,
do you want to paint a little bit of a picture about that, and I'll chime in
yeah,
with my
well, first of
memories.
all, the one thing I fondly remember the 1985 season. That season, the Yankees won their most regular season games. For me, one of the things that the 1985 team proves, or one thing that they substantiate for me, is that baseball and the Yankees and winning, it's more than just about who wins the title in the end. The World Series title is the ultimate goal. We know that. But you can't have a World Series and a postseason without a regular season. And the regular season, it matters. And so this season was one of the most entertaining and one of the most enjoyable seasons. It was definitely the most impressive season of the 80s, and and it's a season where, if you remember it, if you recall it, you should have fond memories of it. And it's a team that, although they didn't win a title, they gave fans a lot to root for.
Yes. And at the same time, there was a lot of pressure on this 1985 team because the Yankees hadn't made the playoffs since 1981. And that was after years and years and years going back, over a decade of making it. And so you can only imagine with George Steinbrenner at the helm, the kind of pressure that they were under to get to those playoffs because of that.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the let's talk about the managers for a second. And
The
and
year started inauspiciously. Yogi Berra, who led the team in 1984 and brought the Yankees, I think, to a third place finish at the end of that season. That season, although they didn't finish with the title, but what made that season exciting was the batting race between Don Mattingly and our feature player tonight, Dave Winfield.
Yep.
I was a Dave Winfield guy. I was rooting for Dave Winfield. And it came down to the last day of the season. They were tied. On the last day, Don Mattingly got 3 hits. Dave Winfield got a single hit. So Don Mattingly became the batting champion of 1984. And that was much to my disappointment. Again, I really wanted Dave Winfield to win that thing. Now, of course, most Yankee fans, they pay fealty to Don Mattingly. It's understandable. He's a homegrown kid. But I liked Winfield. I liked everything that he represented. Um, Dave Winfield was a figure that we had never seen the likes of on the Yankees ever before. He was.
Oh, we're losing your sound, Spencer. Um, Spencer, I don't know if you could hear Ciarra. Do you hear her sound? Yeah.
No, I don't hear any sound from Spencer.
So let me try to alert him in a different way for a second. Spencer, we see that you're talking, but we can't hear you. So
I'm gonna fill in the dead air.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
So when I think about the 1985 season, I think Don Mattingly, AL MVP. I think Rickey Henderson, 80 stolen bases. I think Dave Winfield and just how powerful he was and just how much of an impact he made. And then I think Ron Guidry, fantastic season, right? But then when you look across the river to the Mets, they had a lot of notable names. They had Doc Gooden. They had Darryl Strawberry. Doc Gooden had probably one of the best pitching performances like in the history of baseball as far as that season goes. He was 20 years old when he came up, and his numbers were just incredible. We're looking at a 24-4 record, 1.53 ERA, 268 strikeouts, and that's through 276.2 innings. And he won the Cy Young unanimously. Like he was just could not hit the guy. So both teams had incredible rosters. What's interesting for me is that the Mets 1985 roster is more recognizable for me than the Yankees 1985 roster, just based on the names that are on there. If you look at 1985 and 2025, right? So 1985, the Yankees were 2 games behind the Blue Jays, missed the playoffs. Now the Blue Jays are chasing us, and I know it's only May, but they're 2.5 games behind us. They're tied with the Red Sox for second in the AL East, and we're back on top. So it's interesting to see where we'll finish. Whereas the Mets, who were chasing the Cardinals back in 1985, they are currently in first place in the NL East, and they have one of the better records in baseball. I want to go on a limb here and say they have 28 wins, but I will have to double check that math because I'm not entirely sure. Yes, so the Mets are 28-16 currently. They are a very good baseball team. It should be a very good matchup going into this weekend. Very much like 1985. So,
and oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Ciarra.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, something about Yogi Berra that I just wanted to put the thread through, and Spencer's figuring out. We finally connected, so if I seem distracted, I apologize. I just broke it to him that he was talking, and none of us could hear anything he was saying, so he's figuring it out. Oh, technology. So Spencer was when we lost him, he was talking about the 1984 season, and Berra was the manager and how that ended, and he got fired April 28th of the 1985 season.
Crazy.
George Steinbrenner just kicked him to the curb. Can you imagine kicking Yogi Berra to the curb? It's just, Yogi Berra, who would have been 100 years old this year, and a true icon, Hall of Famer, etc. So, and in came Billy Martin. Now let's talk about Billy Martin for a minute, because Billy Martin, and I have a hunch, Ciarra, you know the name. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what era you became a fan. Billy Martin is sort of infamous. I wouldn't call him famous, I'd call him infamous. And so Billy Martin had already been fired like 3 times when Steinbrenner brought him back after kicking
I hope
Yogi.
so. Can they hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we're all good, Spencer. I'm going into
Thank you. I don't know where I cut off from.
and I'm going into the Billy Martin entering as the manager thing. Now, so Billy Martin, let me paint a little picture of him. He was as rough and tumble and hot and just easily set off a guy as you could ever imagine. And the 80s in general, let me just tell you, 1985, yes, that's what we're focusing on, but the 80s was like the rough and tumble era. It was like, it was guaranteed that at some point there would be a bench clearing. The police on horseback sometimes had to come in to break up the rumbles. And Billy Martin was very often the instigator. And something really controversial happened in that season with Billy Martin. And hold on to your hats, because I don't know if you could even imagine this happening. But a pitcher on the team at the time, his name was Ed Whitson, broke Billy Martin's arm in a fight.
Probably deserved it.
In a hotel. And that fight was so hard that it began in a hotel room, then went across multiple parts of the hotel and out into the parking lot. Can you imagine? I got no information on who got suspended. It was off premises, so who knows how that all got sorted out. But can you imagine that happening in this time? It was really the whole culture of baseball. And, some will say, well, I'm sure Billy Martin deserved it one way or another. But
it's interesting because Aaron Boone is the complete opposite of Billy Martin. And I'm telling you, I would not have been a fan of Billy Martin. I do not think you need to bully your players to get your point across, but that's just me personally. But relatable story, because who hasn't wanted to punch their boss in the face every now and then? So shout out to Ed for that.
Hey, I'm a boss. I hope not. Yes, no, point taken. Spencer, did you want to add anything about your memory of that Ed Woodson incident before?
Yeah, sure. When Billy Martin was hired, again, like you said, it was already his fourth installment. And like Ciarra, you think you wouldn't have liked him. I substantiate you would not have liked him. I didn't like Billy Martin. In fact, I will say if I had the power, I would unretire his number one from Monument Park. I don't think he deserves it. Billy Martin was an alcoholic. For that, we can forgive him for. But he was also racist, and he made many racist comments. He was racist towards Reggie Jackson. And he was, he was like the Ty Cobb of the 1980s, you could say, as far as like his racist tendencies were. His famous remark, I'd hire Hitler and Mussolini if they'd help me win a ball game. Yeah, it sounds a little bit funny, but like there is a deeper, more sinister, like racist tendency with him. But I will give Billy Martin this credit, though. He really turned that team around when he took over the team. Again, I was a youngster, so I'm thinking, oh no, not again. But the Yankees started playing better. They, it was just amazing to see the turnaround. And it was amazing to see them go from last place, and then they were in sixth place, and then fifth place. And, by the All-Star break, they were really seriously competing, for third, second, and first place. They were really going after the Toronto Blue Jays. So getting to that fight with Ed Whitson in the middle of the summer, I think what most fans don't realize about it was a lot more chaotic and a lot more violent than most people realize. It started off in a bar, and Martin was, making disparaging remarks about Ed Whitson. Ed Whitson, he was a pitcher. In short, he just could not make it in New York. He struggled. He struggled in New York. He was a Southern guy, but it got back to him that Billy Martin had made these bad remarks about him in this bar. So Whitson confronted him, and eventually they started fighting. The fighting actually went out into the adjacent hotel lobby. Players, who were in the bar, they separated the two of them. The story goes is that Billy Martin got onto an elevator, and he was on this elevator, and the fight had ended at that point. When the elevator opened up, now I'm not sure if he was going up to his room or if he was going down somewhere else, but when the elevator opened up, Whitson was right in front of the elevator,
snap!
and the fight continued. And this fight went out into the parking lot. So it's definitely a fun story to think of, like all this chaos. But at the time, it was really bad, and it's understandable why the Yankees would have wanted to cover it up and not let it get out at all. That was an ugly situation for what was an otherwise a really good season.
Yeah, I have a feeling that George opened up his wallet with the local newspapers and handed out some money, saying, "Hey, we're keeping this out of the headlines, right? Right."
Which I can't remark on that.
and so you mentioned that Martin whipped this team into shape, and let me just say that part of the reason why that team was so good was some notable acquisitions that year. That was the year that Bernie Williams became a Yankee. That was his
1985.
first. Yep, was
You
when
mean
the
in the minor leagues?
yeah, but yeah, they signed him to a minor league contract, but I believe he was on the 40-man throughout at some point in the season. They
No,
also got
no,
they did okay. They
not
also got
1985.
well okay. So
I'm sorry, I
then
don't mean to embarrass you in front of our audience. No, not in 1985. I don't think he was even 17 back then.
okay, well, this is what my research revealed, but and
Forgive me.
Jimmy Leyritz was another one, and Leyritz and Williams both were, I mean, you're talking then entering into the 90s and the dynasty years. But the roster, there's some names on this roster that will tell you why it's a shame that they didn't make it all the way. So Ken Griffey Sr. was on this roster in 1985. And Spencer, I know you wanted to say something about Ken Griffey.
Well, Ken Griffey, of course, the father of Ken Griffey Jr. He was a great player for the Yankees. He came over from the Cincinnati Reds with Dave Collins in 1982. At the time, the thinking of the Yankees was to bring him over more so for his speed. But he was a very good outfielder. He was a very good base runner, and he was he was an ample hitter. But Ken Griffey is a guy who exemplifies the problems of playing for George Steinbrenner. George Steinbrenner in the 1980s, one of the things that he commonly did is he would use the press to call out and even embarrass his players. He did it to Dave Righetti. He did it to Don Mattingly. He did it to Dave Winfield, which we're going to talk about. And he did it to Ken Griffey as well. In 1985 and even going into 1986, Griffey was struggling, and George Steinbrenner was calling him out and really embarrassing him. I'm like, really, it was really bad. It's not the kind of thing that would happen today. The reason why it's of interest to me is because if you fast forward, we all know the story of Ken Griffey Jr. We all know his feelings on the Yankees. Ken Griffey has always discussed of a situation where he was playing in the Yankee dugout and Billy Martin shooed him out. But while he was being shooed out, the son of Greg Nettles was on third base, and Ken Griffey saw this, and so he has cited that as his reason for his dislike of the Yankees. But in my opinion, it goes deeper than that. In my opinion, Ken Griffey Jr.'s dislike of the Yankees is because of how dreadful George Steinbrenner treated his father. I think that is more the reason why Ken Griffey never wanted to be a Yankee. He would have rather have retired than played for the Yankees, and he will never set foot in Yankee Stadium unless it's absolutely, absolutely necessary. But until that day comes, he will never have any love for the Yankees. And you know something? I don't blame him. If it happened to my father, I'd feel the same way.
Sure, of course. And so we're going to get back to Winfield in a second at the outfielder that he was. But the pitchers, you just mentioned one of them being Dave Righetti. So these are names that, Ciarra, let me know if these ring bells for you. So Ron Guidry, the Gator, Louisiana Lightning, Ron Guidry. We had the Niekro brothers. We had both Phil Niekro and Joe Niekro with us that season. And, Guidry and who did I just say? Righetti. So I don't recall if they're in Monument Park or if
Guidry is.
Guidry is, but Righetti is not. Is that what it is? Right. And in the Hall of Fame, neither one. Is that correct? Yes.
Right.
So, but certainly of the caliber. So I don't know if they were ever on the ballot or not, but very instrumental always. And we're not going to get into stats, but and extraordinarily popular.
I will give you one stat. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yes,
it's very significant because it is germane to the Subway Series this weekend. Ron Guidry and the Mets' Dwight Gooden both led the league in victories that season. Ron Guidry put together 22 wins, and I think Dwight Gooden, he put together 24 wins. And that was the year that Dwight Gooden was just absolutely electric. It was already his third year in the league. I think he came up in '83. I'm not sure about that, but he was just out of sight. But again, you had these two teams competing for fans around the city, and one thing that gets forgotten is just how great the two aces were, Guidry and Gooden. And it's kind of ironic how later on Gooden came over to the Yankees. Not only came over to the Yankees, but pitched a no-hitter for the Yankees too. So forgive me for interrupting.
So no, it's totally fine. So what would the comparison be these days then in terms of aces? Current aces is Fried. Ciarra, do you happen to know who the ace is for the Mets, and is there any comparison there?
So first of all, I'm very upset that we're not getting that pitching duel where it would be our ace versus their ace, because right now Max Fried leads the league in ERA and Kodai Senga is second in ERA. So I'm upset we're not getting that pitching duel, but that's what I would compare it to at this moment, because if you just look at their numbers, they're like right there with each other. And honestly, I'm going to give the Mets some credit here. Going into this season, everybody said the Mets have zero pitching, and they have been lights out, including our old friend Clay Holmes. So got to give credit to that pitching lab they have over there in Queens.
Clay Holmes has been the biggest surprise. I mean, I thought it was very dubious. I didn't think it would work out, but you're right. The Mets are making it work, and he is, he might make the All-Star team.
Yeah. So, all those Rolaids we ate when he was with us in the bullpen. And look what happens when he leaves us.
So now we get him for Devin Williams. So
you brought up the Niekro brothers. Again, 1985, that brings up an interesting point. 1985 was that famous play against the White Sox where the two runners, I think it was Bobby Meacham and Dale Berra, were running home on a double, and Carlton Fisk made the put out on both of them, which was seen as an embarrassment. But I think the next day you had Tom Seaver, who was now pitching for the White Sox, and Tom Seaver pitched his 300th game Fast forward to the very last game of the 1985 season, Phil Niekro of the Yankees pitches his 300th game. So the Yankees were they were the winners of a 300 game winner, and they were subject to the loss of a 300 game winner. I mean, that is just absolutely remarkable, especially in this day and age where I don't think we're ever going to see a 300 game winner again. So something interesting again, also the 1985 season.
Yeah, it really was the season that was built for greatness, and we just never got
Yeah.
to the end on that. Yeah, and Karen saying she had to join for Dave Winfield, and so Karen, you're just in time because we did talk about him a little bit, but we're going to go deeper. And I just put up for those of you that haven't don't know anything about Dave Winfield or read about him, there he is right on the screen for you, number 31, outfielder, mostly center field for his career, and so known obviously much more for his offense, or at least that's more talked about, than his defense. But just look at that swing, look at that slide at home plate. I love that action shot where the catcher is literally like levitating off from behind the plate there, trying to avoid. I mean, can you imagine Dave Winfield coming at you hot at full speed? So let's talk some more about Dave Winfield. So Spencer, I know you have a lot to say about him, but let me just throw a few fact out about him first.
Well, first, I want to share with you an
Oh,
experience I had in meeting Dave Winfield. 2006, Winfield, who had already authored multiple books, he authored the book Dropping the Ball. It was really about, primarily about the declining number of black players in baseball. But he did a book signing at a renowned bookstore in Ridgewood, New Jersey. It's called Bookends. With Bookends, if you got there early, not only did you get an autograph and get to meet him, but if you were one of the first, 50 or so people, you got to sit in on a pre-signing talk from the player. So I was lucky to be one of the first 50 there, and they herded us downstairs, and there's Dave Winfield in the front, and I'm telling you, it was like an out-of-body experience. I'm sitting in this chair. There's only like, again, 50 people in the audience, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm getting a personal lecture from Dave Winfield. Is this really happening? I
it's
cannot
me.
believe this. He talked about things like the Howard Spira scandal, his relationship with George Steinbrenner. It was tattered, but then, later on in his retirement, he made amends with George Steinbrenner. When we finally got around to the book signing, when it was my turn, this was good. I asked Dave, "Hey Dave, do you ever get a Christmas card from Mike Heath?" Now the reason why this is funny is because in 1983 or 1984, the Yankees are playing the Oakland A's. Mike Norris is pitching. Mike Heath is the catcher. Mike Norris throws one really in on Winfield. And Winfield tells me, I said to Mike Heath, if the next one comes in like that, I'm not going after him. I'm going after you. So the next one came up and in. Mike Heath, got up, to protect his pitcher. And in the video, you see Dave Winfield. He grabs Mike Heath by the neck, like Darth Vader, in Star Wars, So he's telling me this story, and he got a laugh when I asked him about Mike Heath. In fact, after he signed my book, I said thank you, but I didn't realize he was going to go on about it. I could have gotten to spend more time with Dave Winfield, but that was over 10 years ago. God, almost 20 years ago now. But I sort of like to think, gee, I wonder if Dave remembers, he was at a book signing and somebody asked him about Mike Heath, doesn't know my name, doesn't know my face, but I wonder if that ever crosses his mind every now and then, because he got a laugh out of that.
and that's just a great memory for you to hold, Spencer. That I mean, all the surrealism, aside, that you made Dave Winfield laugh. I mean, who gets to say that in
Yeah.
our universe? And Karen saying that, that was an awesome story, Spencer. He had it rough with George. Yeah, and Karen, we did go into some of that roughness, and George's mismanagement and of Winfield and several other players. And Karen's highlighting that Winfield had something like 200 stolen bases. Um,
223 to be exact.
wow, say that again, Ciarra.
223.
Good.
223.
Yeah.
Wow, and for his size,
Well,
you know,
that his that's an operative word there because his size is very significant. When Dave Winfield signed with the Yankees, first of all, I was still a youngster at the time, so I didn't know who Dave Winfield was. All I knew was on the news there was this big story: Yankees signed Dave Winfield for, listen to this, a 10-year, $22 million contract. Oh my God. Like it's going to explode from all that money he's making. We've never heard of this before. We'd never heard of a contract that big before. We had never seen a player his size before. I mean, today, you got Randy Johnson, you've got Aaron Judge, you've got all these big guys, Shohei Ohtani,
Stanton.
everybody's
Yep.
6'4", 6'5". Back then, to have a guy like Dave Winfield, it was a rarity. We felt special that we had such a big player, and he was an impressive player. You're right about that, Lynn. I think one play that everybody remembers is I think it was against the Orioles where a ball was shot into left field, and Winfield reaches with his glove, and it looks like he goes 4 rows in and grabs the home run. I don't think they won the game, but he made such an awesome moment. It was the kind of thing that you'd expect regularly from Dave Winfield. And at the plate, he could just extend his arms. I mean, he was like a spider, just such a big guy.
It's great for you to mention that, because so much of what I read was about his offense, and
Yeah.
so that he was a solid outfielder as well is so that tracks. And Karen's adding that he was drafted to the NBA and the NFL.
We talked about that. Yeah, you're right.
He was drafted to 4 different professional sports teams, which is insane. So the San Diego Padres, the Atlanta Hawks, the Utah Stars, and the Minnesota Vikings.
Wow.
All around athlete.
Yeah.
Well, I remember for me, Dave Winfield really became a surrogate hero for me after Reggie Jackson departed from the Yankees. Reggie was my guy, and Dave helped fill that void. But as time went on, I really love Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield is still one of my favorite players, and I still feel so privileged to have had that moment with him. He's on Twitter. I send him messages on Twitter like everybody does. But, he's not the kind of guy that'll respond to the fans, unfortunately. But I'm so glad that I had that moment. I do want to say, I was at a very famous game between the Yankees and the Cleveland Indians in 1981. It was Fan Appreciation Night, and it was a night that Reggie Jackson and John Denny got into this huge brawl. And sometimes when they do tributes to Reggie Jackson in the local news area, they will show clips of him going out and charging the mound. But it was Dave Winfield who was on second base after Reggie hit that home run before that big brawl participated. Then the next year, I went to opening day in 1982, and Dave Winfield hit a game-tying home run. I think it was in the 8th inning against the Chicago White Sox, a game that ultimately went 12 or 13 innings.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, later on, I was really into taking pictures of my favorite players. And what I would do is, I'd be sitting in the outfield, but I'd take my little cheap Kodak camera, run all the way out to home plate. I'd go down, the stairs. At this time, they would still let you do that.
Yep.
I would get my pictures of Dave Winfield. I remember this one time, one of the ushers shooed me away, but then a fan was nice to me and said, "Go ahead, take your picture, kid."
Yeah.
I got my photo of Dave, but I would do that every time that I would see him in the game.
Your fandom runs deep. So And so here's some fun facts about Dave Winfield as we start to get down to wrapping things up for this episode. So let me tell you that of all the teams that Dave Winfield played for, his tenure with the Yankees was the longest. He was with the Yankees from 1981 to 1990 in pinstripes. And during that time, he won 5 of the 7 Gold Glove awards he got in his career while he was with the Yankees. To what you were saying, Spencer, about his prowess in the outfield, he made the All-Star team every year as a Yankee.
And when he made the All-Star team a couple of times, I think 1983 was one of them. I think 1981 too. I think he played the entire game. You don't see players playing the entire game, and that made me proud. I was like, "Yeah, my guy Dave Winfield playing the whole All-Star game." Go Dave.
And someday I'm going to make him laugh in the Bookends bookstore.
Yeah, right.
So here's an interesting historical fact. In 1985, Winfield became the first Yankee since Yogi Berra to achieve 4 straight 100 RBI seasons.
Also made me proud,
yeah, and I cannot tell you if that record has since been broken, but again, how it ties into, you mean the Yogi Berra that he barely got to know, because he was there, from just for 84 and 10 minutes in 85. And so let's talk about his stats in 1985. So he had 174 hits. His batting average was 275, 26 home runs, 114 RBIs, and 19 stolen bases in 1985. And yeah, he got the Silver Slugger and the Gold Glove that year.
For me, the stat that stands out was really in his first full season with the Yankees. Backtracking a little bit, 1981, of course, was interrupted by the strike, so everybody's numbers were down. And in the wake of my fandom of Reggie Jackson, Reggie was now with the Angels. Reggie actually led the league in home runs in 1982, his first season away from the Yankees. He had 39 home runs. Dave Winfield came in second place, so I was proud that my guy Dave Winfield was runner-up to it wasn't just Reggie Jackson. Gorman Thomas was also the home run leader in 1982. They both hit 39 home runs. Then the next year, when he and Don Mattingly were in that race for the batting title, that was so surreal because we never saw Dave Winfield as like this 300 hitter, like a Tony Gwynn-like kind of guy. And that went all the way to the end of the season. Not 83, it was 84 is when that happened. But that was really exciting. It was really cool to see Dave Winfield, seen as that kind of player, not just a home run hitter, not just as a bomber. And again, like we said in our pre-show, I know that a lot of people were rooting for Don Mattingly. I was rooting for Dave Winfield, and I was very disappointed when Don
Close your ears, Karen. Karen's in the chat, my sister, and Don Mattingly is her guy. So just saying, don't listen to the part.
I'm in the minority on that, I know.
No, Donnie Baseball, you kidding, beloved. But yes, and Dave Winfield, it's the very reason we're shouting him out. So part of what we always try to do is an unsung hero or an undersung hero. And that's definitely Dave Winfield. So Ciarra, take us to the present. Take us to the present. Snap us back. Who would you liken Dave Winfield to, knowing all these things about him?
So it's always hard to compare such a good player to the modern day. We're talking about a guy who had 7 Gold Gloves, 12-time All-Star, 3,000 plus hits, 465 home runs, 220 plus stolen bases. Like, that's a phenomenal career. And it's insane to say that he never won an MVP through all of that.
Right.
With that being said, there are 3 guys that come to mind for me just based on different characteristics of Dave Winfield. So right out the gate, Aaron Judge, just their size is similar. Their power is similar. Yeah. Secondly, I would think of Juan Soto because Dave Winfield was known for being very patient at the plate. Soto's probably a little bit more patient because he has the craziest eye I've ever seen in baseball, but very similar. And they can both hit to multiple, they can hit all over the field. But lastly, a guy that I don't think others would think of when it comes to this, because when you think of this person, you do not think of him playing the field at this point in his career. You think of him as a DH. And I'm talking about Giancarlo Stanton, because when Stanton played the field, he had a cannon for an arm, and so did Dave Winfield. So three comparisons, however, none of them will do Dave Winfield justice in the career that he had. Of course, we know our guy Stanton, he's going to end with close to 500 home runs, if not 500. And, Soto and Judge are going to go on to have Hall of Fame careers as well. But Dave Winfield is definitely one of a kind.
Yeah, and I really want to dig further. You've gotten me on a Dave Winfield thing, Spencer, because I really want to understand why he wasn't in contention for the Hall of Fame with the numbers he put up and the career he had. But I think I think the three you mentioned would be honored to hear their names in because they know who Dave Winfield is and who he was for the Yankees, for sure. So let's just go around real quick for final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap it up. Spencer, what's your final thought here?
Okay, you got to work with me here. Forgive me. I got a few final thoughts. First of all, on the issue of Dave Winfield, he had a scarred relationship with George Steinbrenner. That stemmed from a contract dispute where he was supposedly duped, or at least he overlooked how the contract was written, where George Steinbrenner would give a certain amount to the Dave Winfield Foundation. And that is what prompted Steinbrenner ultimately to find dirt, or to attempt to find dirt on Dave Winfield. And that's how he got in touch with Howard Spira. Howard Spira, of course, was this gambler, and his purpose was to find dirt on Dave Winfield. It got George Steinbrenner into trouble. It got him suspended from baseball. But with Dave Winfield, I think it is really a shame. I think it is really a shame that the Yankees did not retire his uniform number. His number 31, no Yankee should ever wear that number again. And his number deserves and really should have been placed in Monument Park. That's my feeling about Dave Winfield. And there's still so much more we could have talked about Dave Winfield tonight. That's what kind of a career he had, and that's what he meant to the Yankees. And one other thing to tie in Winfield with fans of Ciarra's generation, I really like that Derek Jeter's favorite player has been stated to be Dave Winfield. That makes me feel so good. And I feel like, in a way, Derek Jeter helped bring Dave Winfield back into the Yankee fold a little bit. I really do. So that's a good thing.
Oh, I didn't know that. I love knowing that. Ciarra, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, first of all, Derek Jeter was my favorite player growing up. So shout out to Jeter for just being amazing. I don't really blame him for not having a good relationship with George Steinbrenner. Yankees fans, we put Steinbrenner on this pedestal because he went out and he spent money, but realistically, he wasn't a good person. So that's all there is to it. But at the end of the day, number 31, great baseball player. Nobody currently wears it on the Yankees, so it's like retired without being retired, I guess you could say. Yeah. But we're talking about a guy who had a Hall of Fame career and just one of those unsung heroes because he doesn't get talked about as much as other guys.
Yep. And so my final thought is it's never too late to campaign for him to get his number retired. I don't know what, there's petitions that could be started. Maybe we need to do that and petition the Yankees to do that. I'm going to consider that as one of my next steps. And my other final thought is that I really hope that those of you listening take a look for yourself at Dave Winfield and his career. There's so much that we could have talked for, half the night, clearly about it and about him. And I can only hope that he gets all the way brought back in the fold. I know Old Timers Day is like a fake out these days. It's not really a thing, but I really would like to see him more present within the organization, and maybe there's a chance with Hal.
More appreciation.
Yep, absolutely. So, So that about does it for this week's for this episode. We will be back on another off day as we head into the exciting series. I wonder if Dave Winfield's going to be watching. Um, why don't you send him a message on about that and ask him, Spencer? Maybe you'll get an answer.
We could tag him. I don't think he'll respond, but if you tag him, he'll definitely get the
All,
message.
all you got to do is keep trying,
Yeah.
and everyone in the chat, thanks for joining. Those of you that are listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And history matters, and we're here to tell it. So thanks again, and let's go Yankees.
Go Yankees.